There comes a time when your silence is not surrender, it's strategy. When the noise of betrayal surrounds you, when lies twist the air and truth is marked, something deep inside you tells you, don't speak, not yet, because there's a reckoning brewing, one not forged by your hands, but by the one who sees what was done in the shadows. You don't need to defend yourself to those who chose deception over loyalty. You don't need to shout to be heard by heaven. Just wait. Keep quiet. God's about to expose them. And when he does, no whisper, no manipulation, no mask will survive the truth that's coming. Silence is not weakness, it's strategic. They think your silence means defeat, that you've given up, that you have no words left, no strength to respond, no fire left in your soul, but they're wrong. You're not silent because you're broken. You're silent because you're wise, because you've learned that not every battle deserves your voice, and not every insult warrants your energy. The loud ones, the schemers, the manipulators, they depend on your reaction. They want the chaos. They feed on your defense. But when you choose silence, you starve their games. You become unreadable, unpredictable. And that unsettles them. People often mistake stillness for surrender, but stillness is where strategy is born. The calmest waters run the deepest. The warrior who watches is no less deadly than the one who strikes. In fact, sometimes the watcher is the one who wins. Because silence doesn't mean you're unaware. It means you've chosen clarity over impulse. It means you've seen the game, the players, the traps, and you've decided not to play by their rules. They tried to provoke you, push your buttons, corner you into a response they could twist and use. But you stayed quiet, not because you didn't have the words, but because you knew your words were too valuable to be wasted on ears that only hear what suits them. You didn't engage, and in doing so, you took the one thing they feared most: control. Because silence can't be edited. It can't be quoted out of context. It can't be used against you in whispers behind closed doors. It stands there, unshakable, a mirror reflecting their own behavior back at them. And in that silence you begin to hear more. You hear their insecurity when they raise their voice, hoping to drown out the quiet truth that your silence is revealing. You see the cracks in their story, the panic in their eyes, the way they fumble to maintain the lies when you give them nothing to fight against. Your stillness becomes their confusion. Your calm becomes their storm. They wanted a scene. You gave them nothing. They wanted drama. You gave them stillness. They wanted to see you unravel. You showed them restraint, poise, control. That's not weakness. That's power. Refined, focused, patient. The kind of power that waits for the right moment, not to retaliate but to rise. And while they carry on with their schemes, trying to pull you out of character, they don't realize you're not even in the same play anymore. You've walked off their stage, left their script behind. You don't need the audience they perform for. You don't need the validation they chase. Because when you're silent, you're listening to something higher. You're trusting that the truth doesn't need a spotlight to shine. It just needs time. The masks will slip in time. They walk among you with smiles painted on like armor, words rehearsed like lines in a play. To everyone else, they are charming, thoughtful, even noble. They've mastered the performance, every gesture calculated, every expression carefully placed. They say the right things, know when to laugh, when to cry, when to feign humility. But what they can't fake forever is consistency. Because no mask, no matter how skillfully crafted, can withstand the weight of time. You've seen glimpses already, small cracks, subtle inconsistencies, a flicker of anger behind a grin, a flash of jealousy disguised as concern. They slipped once or twice, maybe more, but always quick to cover, quick to explain, quick to redirect attention. That's how they survive, by controlling the narrative. But the truth has a habit of leaking through even the smallest fractures, and with time, those leaks become floods. They thrive on perception. Their power depends on how others see them. That's why they work so hard to curate their image, to rewrite history, to shape opinions behind closed doors. They fear one thing above all else, being seen for who they really are, because behind the mask lies insecurity, manipulation, and a heart that doesn't match the words it speaks. They pretend to be protectors while they act like victims while they orchestrate the pain. But life has a rhythm, a pace, and no one can outrun the consequences of pretending. Sooner or later, pressure mounts. People change, circumstances shift, and the cracks in the performance start to widen. They can't remember all their lies. They can't keep up the role. Eventually, the face behind the mask begins to show, not because they want it to, but because they can't help it anymore. This is why you don't need to fight their false image. You don't need to shout their truth from the rooftops. You don't need to beg others to see what you saw. Time is a better witness than you could ever be, because over time, people reveal themselves. Patterns repeat. Behaviors slip through. And those who once applauded the performance begin to notice the curtain twitching. They start asking questions. They start connecting dots. You've been gaslighted, doubted, maybe even silenced, told you were overreacting, that what you felt wasn't real, that you misread the signs, but deep down you knew. You saw something behind the eyes, heard something beneath the words, and you were right. You just saw it earlier than the rest. That's the burden of discernment. You see through masks long before others believe they exist. But truth has a gravity of its own. It doesn't need your force. It doesn't need your defense. It will rise, all on its own. And when it does, it won't just reveal what they are. It will expose everything they tried to hide. Every false friendship, every lie wrapped in charm, every motive disguised as care. God doesn't rush, but he never misses. There is a weight to waiting, especially when you've been wronged, especially when you've watched liars thrive, manipulators win, and truth sit in silence. It's tempting to step in, to prove your innocence, to pull back the curtain yourself, but something inside tells you to hold, to wait, not out of fear, but out of obedience. Because justice that comes from your hand will always fall short, but justice that comes from God, timed perfectly, placed precisely, never misses. It's easy to believe that silence means absence, that God's delay is a sign he isn't watching, that he isn't moving. But you must understand, God is never in a hurry, because he sees the whole picture, not just the event, not just the lie, not just the moment you were betrayed, but everything that surrounds it. He's working in places you can't see, softening hearts, shifting circumstances, preparing the perfect hour, the exact moment where the truth will land like thunder, and none will be able to deny it. They thought they got away with it, that you were silent because you were defeated, that no one saw what they did, but heaven keeps record. Every betrayal, every twisted word, every time they smiled in your face while planting the knife in your back, nothing escaped his notice. He's not blind. He's patient, and there's a reason for that patience. It gives them time to repent, to turn, to choose differently. But if they don't, if they continue in darkness, the exposure will come, not out of revenge, but out of justice, and it will be precise. The truth doesn't need to scream. It needs to arrive when it's strongest, when their empire of illusion is most fragile, when those who once believed the lie are finally ready to see clearly. God doesn't just want justice for you. He wants transformation for those watching, so that when the truth is revealed, it's not just about vindication. It's about revelation. It's about waking others up to what they missed while they were distracted by appearances. You've prayed for answers. You've asked why they continue to flourish, why their lies haven't unraveled, why the silence from heaven feels like neglect. But what you don't see is the weight of what's being arranged behind the scenes. The timing isn't off, it's being aligned. And when the moment comes, no defense will hold, no mask will shield them, no reputation will save them. No reputation will save them from the clarity that falls like lightning. Because when God exposes, He doesn't do it partially. He doesn't do it emotionally. He does it completely. No detail missed, no truth left buried. And the best part is, you won't have to lift a finger. You won't have to orchestrate anything. You won't need to prove a single word. Because when it's God's hand that moves, it's unquestionable, it's undeniable, and it's irreversible. Your silence is the sound of their fear. They expected a reaction from you. They needed it. Because people like them, those who manipulate, who provoke, who thrive in emotional chaos, draw their strength from your response. They poke, prod, twist the knife, waiting for the explosion. But when it doesn't come, when you respond with silence instead of rage, with composure instead of collapse, they don't feel victorious. They feel exposed. Because silence says something they cannot control. To the one who betrayed you, your silence is unsettling. It speaks louder than words ever could. It tells them they didn't break you, that despite everything they threw your way, lies, manipulation, betrayal, you didn't crumble. You chose peace over revenge, stillness over spectacle. And that choice terrifies them, because now they don't know what's coming next. They can't predict you. They can't control the narrative anymore. You've removed yourself from their drama, and now they're performing to an empty audience. They will act confused, pretend they don't understand your distance, play innocent in front of others, hoping to provoke questions, hoping to drag you back into the web of words and conflict. But deep down they know. Your silence is not ignorance, it's judgment. Not the kind that condemns, but the kind that says, I've seen enough, and I no longer owe you an explanation. And that's what disturbs them most, because in your silence you've taken back your power. They can spin stories, whisper lies, present themselves as victims, but the one thing they can't do is silence your presence. You're still there, unmoved, unbothered, silent. And that silence forces them to hear something they've avoided all along, the echo of their own guilt. Because when you stop arguing, stop defending, stop reacting, all that's left for them to face is themselves. And for someone who's built their image on illusion, facing the mirror is the ultimate threat. You're not punishing them, you're protecting yourself. Because you've realized that not every truth has to be spoken aloud. Some truths are lived quietly. And your peace, your refusal to engage, your decision to rise above. It's not lost on anyone watching. People are starting to notice, to question, to wonder why someone so loud now looks so nervous. Why the one who used to shout the loudest is now watching their words, because silence shifts the ground beneath them. It creates space for reality to settle in, for truth to rise without force. And that's what they fear most, that your silence isn't the end of the story, it's the beginning of the unraveling. Because deep down, they know that something is coming, something they can't stop, can't predict, can't bury, not because you're plotting, but because you're no longer playing. And in that silence, the weight of everything they've done begins to fall on them, not with noise, not with chaos, but with a stillness that speaks the truth without ever needing to shout. When God unmasks, there's no place to hide. They thought they could cover it forever. That with enough charm, enough stories, enough distractions, no one would ever see through the facade. They wore their masks so well, even they started to believe it. But God sees what no one else does. He sees behind the smiles, behind the carefully chosen words, behind the image they've worked so hard to protect. And when the time comes for Him to lift the veil, there will be nowhere to run, nowhere to retreat, no corner dark enough to conceal what's been hidden in plain sight. This is not about punishment, it's about revelation. God unmasks not to destroy, but to reveal what has been kept in the shadows. And when He does, it's never partial. He doesn't just uncover the actions, He reveals the intentions behind them. He exposes not only what they did, but why they did it. The manipulation, the control, the way they played with emotions while pretending to care. It all comes to light, and suddenly, the story they told no longer holds weight. You've been silent, watching, waiting, not because you were helpless, but because you were wise enough to let God work. And now, the moment begins to shift. The same people who once defended them, who once believed the lies, start to see the truth for themselves. Not because you convinced them, but because the mask has begun to crack on its own. God doesn't need your help to unmask someone. He does it with a precision that no human hand could orchestrate. What's been done in secret will always reach the surface. What's hidden in the dark will always be called into the light. And when it does, it will not be your voice exposing them. It will be their own actions speaking louder than anything you could have said. Their past will rise up, not to haunt them, but to hold them accountable. Because God doesn't miss. He doesn't overlook. And when He moves, everything that was concealed begins to tremble. They counted on people never finding out. They depended on the silence of others, on the confusion they created, on the trail of half-truths they left behind. But God sees the full picture, and when He decides it's time, nothing and no one can stand in the way of that truth. Not status, not reputation, not manipulation. All the masks in the world can't survive when divine light shines on them. The truth doesn't just emerge, it floods, washing away every false word, every hidden motive, every secret agenda. You don't need to defend yourself anymore. You don't need to plead for people to understand. Because when God unmasks someone, He doesn't need a spotlight or a stage. He reveals in such a way that even those who were once blind cannot deny what they now see. The same lips that once praised them will fall silent. The same eyes that once overlooked the signs will begin to open.